Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics on Channels Television. I'm Millicent Walker. On the news this hour, President Muhammadu Buhari is hosting a Council of State meeting, the third since assuming office, with former President Olusegun Obasanjo and some other former heads of state present. Drama today at the Code of Conduct Tribunal as protesters stormed vicinity of the court over Justice Onoge's planned trial. Industrial court order pasted at the premises of the tribunal. And politicians raised concern over security and possible violence ahead of the 2019 elections, with allegations and counter-allegations on who is planning what. Welcome everyone to Lunchtime Politics. The Council of State meeting has been held at the State House, Abuja. This is the third National Council of State meeting to hold under the present administration and the first this year. The President, Muhammadu Buhari, is presiding and his vice, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, is also present. Also in attendance are former heads of state, Olusegun Obasanjo, Goodluck Jonathan and Ashonekan Abdulsalami Abubakar, former Chief Justices of Nigeria and President of Senate, Bukola Saraki, governors of Zamfara, Kebbi, Plateau, Lagos, Borno, Ebonyi, and members of cabinet also present. We hear the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, is present as well, and we understand the major focus could be on the 2019 elections. The Code of Conduct Tribunal has started sitting in the case against the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Walter Onnoghen. The lead counsel to Justice Onnoghen informed the three-man panel of the tribunal of the orders of the Federal High Court, FCT High Court, and the National Industrial Court restraining the tribunal from proceeding with trial. The prosecutor, Mr. Aliyu Umar, however, insists that the business of the day is the arraignment of Justice Onnoghen and the hearing of the motion challenging the jurisdiction of the tribunal. The defendant, counsel, Mr. Olanikpekun, says the defendant has appealed to the Court of Appeal challenging the order of the tribunal to hear the motion challenging the jurisdiction of the tribunal alongside the trial. He adds that the appeal at the Court of Appeal had been adjourned to Thursday, the 24th of January, and it will amount to judicial rascality for a court or tribunal to disobey subsisting court orders that are yet to be vacated. He therefore urged the tribunal to give effect to the restraining orders in addition to the appeal before the appeal court and adjourn the trial indefinitely pending the hearing and determination of the appeal at the appellate court. Well, the registrar confirms that the Chief Justice of Nigeria was served personally on the 14th of this month at about 3:11 p.m. Meanwhile, the order of the Industrial Court yesterday for a substituted service on the Code of Conduct Tribunal chair has been obeyed. The court ordered that the chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal, Danladi Umar, be served an interim order and hearing notice in the suit filed by one Peter Abang seeking to restrain the Code of Conduct Tribunal from prosecuting the Chief Justice of Nigeria. The court had made an interim order on the 14th of January for the suspension of the trial pending the determination of the suit challenging the charges of false asset declaration at the Code of Conduct Tribunal. Well, the CCT premises witnessed protesters who stormed the area, as you can see there, bearing placards chanting pro-Onnoghen slogans. However, police officers have prevented the protesters, we hear, from advancing towards the Code of Conduct Tribunal. Let's now speak to our correspondent, Amaka Okafor, who is covering the proceedings at the Code of Conduct Tribunal. Amaka, good to see you. Tell us what's the latest.
Thank you, Millicent. The tribunal began sitting at about 11 o'clock, and parties have already begun to exchange arguments, while counsel to the CJN argues that the proceedings ought to be stopped pending the determination of the suits before the Federal High Court and the Industrial Court. The counsel to the federal government argues otherwise. He also tells the court, he also told the tribunal that his application seeking for the CJN to step aside was just to enable the CJN, attend to his trial. And just before the sitting, protesters for and against the trial made an attempt to approach the tribunal, but were prevented by the Nigerian police. I can also inform you that the order of the Industrial Court that the chairman of the tribunal be served by substituted means was effected this morning, as the summons were pasted on the gate of the tribunal. I'll definitely keep you abreast of events as they continue to unfold here at the tribunal.
All right, many thanks, Amako Okafo there, keeping abreast of things. Well, let's move over with strong objections, and this is to the resumption of proceedings at the Code of Conduct Tribunal over the Chief Justice of Nigeria, and this is the Nigerian Bar Association. They've called on the executive branch of the federal government of Nigeria to discontinue the prosecution of the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Walter Onnoghen, before the tribunal. In a press release signed by the president of the NBA, Mr. Paul Usoro, he says it is obvious that the immediate goal of the executive is to remove the CJN from office. The association asked the government to follow due process in attaining that goal. According to the NBA, due process is not followed when the executive files an interlocutory motion before the Code of Conduct Tribunal for the removal of the CJN, because such an application disparages and assaults due process enshrined in Section 292, subsection 1A of the 1999 Constitution as amended, which states that a judicial officer shall not be removed from his office or appointment before his age of retirement, except in the following circumstances, and that is in the case of the Chief Justice of Nigeria by the President acting on an address supported by a two-thirds majority of the Senate. Well, let's go over to other issues and issues of election security. It's a season of politicians pointing accusing fingers. This one is coming from the Minister of Information and Culture, who says Boko Haram terrorists and armed bandits have been mobilized by unscrupulous elements to perpetrate massive acts of violence in several states across the northern parts of the country before, during and after the elections. Well, Mr. Lai Mohammed, who made this known at a press conference in Abuja, also asked citizens to be vigilant, law-abiding, and ready to cast their votes.
Having realized that their fortunes have dwindled badly ahead of the polls, the desperate opposition is orchestrating widespread violence with a view to truncating the elections, thus triggering a constitutional crisis that could snowball into the establishment of an interim government. Before you accuse the government of crying wolf, let me tell you, gentlemen, that we have credible intelligence that armed bandits and Boko Haram insurgents have been mobilized to engage in massive attacks and other acts of violence in several states.
And the People's Democratic Party won't take those allegations lightly, and the party has responded to them. Of course, the allegations made by the Minister of Information and Culture. Now, the National Publicity Secretary of the PDP, Mr. Kola Logbodiyo, says the allegations are completely false. He also sarcastically thanked the minister for revealing what he describes as nefarious plans of the APC.
PDP calls on Nigerians to hold President Buhari directly responsible for any escalation of violence in our nation. It is imperative to state that the PDP finds the claims of Alhaji Lai Mohammed as irresponsible and ludicrous.
Let's turn to Abuja studio and speak to experts on the security situations ahead of the 2019 elections. We have joining us from Abuja studios, Mr. Mike Ejiofor, former director at the Department of State Services. Good to have you on the program, Lunchtime Politics. But first, I'd like to ask what you make of, the allegations, counter-allegations. I mean, the ruling APC alleging widespread violence by the opposition party, and of course the opposition party rejecting it. And I mean, are these verified information or just security assumptions, considering that this is a campaign period?
Well, it's quite unfortunate because I've always maintained that actually you cannot discuss politics without discussing security. But we must also be able to separate politics from security by not playing politics with our security. That's the way I see it. And the statement coming from the Minister of Information, I believe he has other channels of passing this information, either to the security agencies, but I believe that it should have emanated. The information or the intelligence should have emanated from the security. And this is intended, naturally during elections, we see escalation of hostilities, especially from Boko Haram. These are people who say they don't believe in constituted government or democracy. So there's bound to be upsurge in attacks now, but ascribing it to opposition is most unfortunate. We can't continue to play politics with our security. I believe that our politicians should learn how to talk, because if you don't, you even escalate the situation. It's not good for us, especially as we are moving to elections.
Yeah, and looking at this period, if you were to map our elections, maybe risk profile, what would you say it is right now?
Well, you see, the situation is charged. The atmosphere is really charged by statements coming from two major political parties. But my worry is that these are not the only political parties we have in this country. We have over 90 political parties. Why must there be problem from APC and PDP? Because the fact remains that these two parties are bent on taking power. The APC on its part is the incumbent government, would not want to relinquish power, and the PDP on its own part will also try to take over power from APC. But my fact remains that this is a democracy. It's a game of number. And go out, talk to the people, convince them on the reason you should be voted for, instead of hitting up the politics. It's becoming very, very rather unfortunate that our politicians don't take our national interest. Rather, they take their own personal interest to go and destabilize the country.
Indications that the forthcoming elections may be marred by violence.
Of course, we should expect violence, but I believe that the security agencies too must have mapped out their strategies, drawn out some of the threat profiles, know some of the hot areas and the areas that are very volatile in some states. Of course, it's obvious that there are many states that are very, very, very charged. If you look at Kano, for instance, you look at the two major dramatists personnel, the president who has control in Kano and Kwankwaso too. You go to River State, you go to Akwa Ibom, you go to, these are charged areas, Lagos, and I think, I believe that the security situation, the security agencies must have mapped and they're on top of the game.
All right, we'd like to thank you so much, former director of the Department of State Services, Mike Ejiofor, for joining us on the program. Still to come on Lunchtime Politics, we'll also be talking to another guest, the Executive Director of the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center. As of course we bring you INEC saying that it has uncovered plans by politicians to use food vendors for vote buying. Find out more when we return.